If you are over the age of 60 and you use a debit card for your everyday purchases, groceries, gas, online shopping, hotel bookings, car rentals, home repairs, medical equipment, there are specific categories of purchases where using that debit card instead of a credit card is costing you money, exposing you to fraud losses you cannot recover, and stripping away legal protections that the federal government built into the consumer finance system specifically to protect you and that your bank will never explain, because your bank profits when you do not know the difference. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's most recent data shows that debit card fraud victims over the age of 60 recover significantly less of their stolen money than credit card fraud victims in the same age group. Not because the fraud is different, because the law is different. The federal protections that apply to unauthorized credit card charges and the federal protections that apply to unauthorized debit card charges are not the same law, not the same standard, and not the same outcome. And the gap between them, the gap your bank has never explained to you, has cost seniors billions of dollars in unrecovered fraud losses that would have been fully covered if the purchase had been made on a credit card instead of a debit card. There are 7 specific purchase categories I am going to walk you through today. 7 situations where using a debit card instead of a credit card either exposes you to unrecoverable fraud loss, strips away consumer protection rights you are legally entitled to, or costs you money in ways that are invisible until something goes wrong. Most seniors use a debit card for at least 5 of these categories without realizing there was ever a choice that mattered. And the one that causes the most financial damage, the one I have watched, cost a retired couple $4,200 with zero legal recourse because of the single card they chose to swipe. That one is category number 4. And I promise you, it is not the one you are expecting. In the next 18 minutes, I am going to show you the exact federal law that protects credit card users and the separate federal law that governs debit card users, and why the difference between them can mean the difference between a full refund and a permanent loss. The specific dollar thresholds and time limits that determine how much of your money you can recover after debit card fraud, and why those thresholds are almost always worse than what most people assume. The 7 purchase categories, one by one, why each one is dangerous on a debit card, and the exact protection you gain by switching to a credit card for that category. And the one type of credit card that provides all of these protections with 0 annual fee, 0 interest if paid monthly, and 0 risk of debt if used correctly. If you use a debit card for any purchase other than cash withdrawal from your own bank's ATM, watch this video all the way through. The information I am about to give you is not about getting into debt. It is not about spending more than you have. It is about using the right tool for the right purchase so that the federal consumer protections that already exist actually apply to you when you need them. My name is Marcus Graves. I am an enrolled agent and consumer financial protection advocate licensed by the federal government to represent taxpayers directly before the Internal Revenue Service. I work with retirees on tax strategy, retirement income planning, and financial fraud recovery. I sit on the side of the consumer and I look at what people are actually protected against versus what they assume they are protected against. And here is what I see on senior financial loss reports year after year that nobody at your bank has any incentive to correct. Seniors who lost money to debit card fraud and were told by their bank that the loss was not recoverable because they did not report it within the required window. Seniors who paid a contractor a deposit by debit card and had no legal recourse when the contractor disappeared. Seniors who booked travel by debit card and lost the entire payment when the travel company went out of business. And seniors who disputed a charge on their debit card and received a fraction of what they would have recovered if the same dispute had been filed on a credit card under a completely different federal statute. Here is why your bank does not explain any of this. Your bank makes money on both your debit card and your credit card, but in different ways and at different margins. When you use a debit card, the transaction pulls directly from your checking account. The bank holds your money, processes the transaction, and collects a small interchange fee from the merchant. When you use a credit card, the bank extends you credit, collects a larger interchange fee from the merchant, and if you carry a balance, collects interest. A bank that educates you about the superior fraud protection of credit cards is not acting against its own interest, but a bank that educates you about the specific weaknesses of debit card protection in specific purchase categories is doing something none of them do proactively, because the liability for debit card fraud losses in many cases falls on you, not the bank. I want to be clear before we go further about what this video is and is not about. This is not about encouraging debt. This is not about carrying a credit card balance. Every strategy I am going to describe today is based on using a credit card as a payment tool, spending only what you already have in your checking account and paying the credit card balance in full every month. Used that way, a credit card costs you nothing in interest, builds your credit score, and wraps every purchase in federal consumer protections that a debit card simply does not provide. I am going to tell you on every purchase category exactly which protection applies and exactly what it means for your money if something goes wrong. Before I get into the 7 categories, I want to tell you about a client of mine. I am going to change his name. I will call him Bernard. Bernard is 69 years old. He is a retired high school principal from outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico. He worked in public education for 34 years. He has a state pension, a modest retirement account, and a paid-off house. He is organized, careful, and deeply skeptical of debt. He cut up his last credit card in 2009 during the financial crisis and has used only his debit card for every purchase since then. He was proud of that decision. He considered it discipline. Bernard is not careless with money. Bernard is methodical. He checks his bank account every morning on his phone. He reviews every transaction. He has never overdrawn his account in his adult life. He considered his debit card the safe choice, the choice that kept him from spending money he did not have and kept him connected directly to his own funds. In the spring of last year, Bernard hired a contractor to replace the roof on his house. The contractor was licensed, had reviews online, and had done work in Bernard's neighborhood before. Bernard paid a $3,800 deposit by debit card at the time of signing. The contractor scheduled the work for 3 weeks later. 3 weeks later, the contractor did not show up. Bernard called. The number was disconnected. Bernard drove to the business address listed on the contract. The building was empty. Bernard went to his bank the same day. He explained what had happened and asked to dispute the $3,800 debit card charge. His bank's fraud department reviewed the case and informed Bernard that because he had voluntarily authorized the transaction, he had willingly paid the contractor the $3,800. The payment did not qualify as unauthorized under the Electronic Fund Transfer Act, which is the federal law governing debit card disputes. The bank could not force a chargeback on an authorized payment gone wrong. Bernard then contacted the contractor's licensing board. He filed a complaint with the New Mexico Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. He sent a demand letter. None of it produced his $3,800. Bernard came to me 6 weeks after the incident, referred by a friend who had worked with me on a tax matter. By then, the $3,800 was almost certainly gone. But what I could do was explain to Bernard exactly why it was gone and exactly why it would not have been gone if he had paid by credit card instead of debit card. Under the Fair Credit Billing Act and the federal statute that governs credit card transactions, Bernard would have had the right to dispute that $3,800 charge as a billing error on the grounds that the goods or services were not delivered as agreed. That right is called a chargeback, and it shifts the burden of proof to the merchant to demonstrate that the goods or services were provided. A contractor who disappeared after taking a deposit cannot meet that burden. Bernard's credit card company would have been legally required under the Fair Credit Billing Act to credit his account and pursue the merchant on his behalf. On a debit card, that right does not exist in the same form. The Electronic Fund Transfer Act protects against unauthorized transactions you did not authorize at all. It does not protect against authorized transactions where the other party failed to deliver. Bernard authorized the payment. The protection did not apply. The $3,800 was gone. He told me the thing that bothered him most was not losing the money, though $3,800 is not nothing on a pension. It was that he had made the debit card choice on purpose. He had thought it was the careful choice, the disciplined choice, the safe choice. He said nobody had ever told him that the careful choice and the protected choice were 2 different things. That is exactly what I am going to tell you now. Category number 1, online purchases from any retailer you have not bought from before. Online fraud targeting seniors has increased every year for the past decade. The Federal Trade Commission's Consumer Sentinel Network data shows that online shopping fraud is among the top 3 fraud categories by dollar loss for Americans over 60. The fraud takes multiple forms: counterfeit goods, non-delivery of purchased items, fake websites designed to look like legitimate retailers, and unauthorized charges that appear after a one-time purchase when card details are stored without clear disclosure. The critical legal difference when online fraud occurs is this: Under the Fair Credit Billing Act, which governs credit cards, you have the right to dispute any charge for goods or services not received as described, not delivered, or charged without authorization. The dispute must be filed within 60 days of the statement date on which the charge appeared. The credit card company is required to investigate, provide a provisional credit to your account during the investigation, and resolve the dispute within 2 billing cycles. Under the Electronic Fund Transfer Act, which governs debit cards, your protection against unauthorized charges depends entirely on how quickly you report the problem. If you report within 2 business days of discovering the unauthorized charge, your maximum liability is $50. If you report between 3 and 60 days after your statement is sent, your maximum liability rises to $500. If you report after 60 days, you may have no protection at all, and the entire loss may be yours to absorb. The practical difference is this. On a credit card, the money never left your bank account while the dispute is being resolved. On a debit card, the money is gone from your checking account the moment the transaction clears and remains gone until and unless the bank resolves the dispute in your favor, which for authorized transactions that went wrong, as Bernard discovered, may never happen. For any online purchase from a retailer you have not previously bought from, use a credit card. Every time, without exception. If the transaction goes wrong, the Fair Credit Billing Act gives you a federally mandated dispute process with provisional credit and a legal timeline for resolution. The debit card gives you a reporting window and a liability cap that gets worse every day you wait. Category number 2, hotel and car rental bookings. This category is the one that surprises people the most because the problem is not fraud. The problem is a completely legal practice called a hold or a block that hotels and car rental companies are permitted to place on payment cards at the time of booking or check-in, and that behaves very differently depending on whether the card is a credit card or a debit card. When you book a hotel room or rent a car and pay by debit card, the hotel or rental company places a hold on your debit card for an amount that typically exceeds the actual cost of the booking. A hotel may hold $200 to $500 above the room rate for incidentals. A car rental company may hold $200 to $1,000 above the rental cost for potential damage or fuel charges. That hold amount is not a charge. It is a reservation of funds in your checking account that makes those funds unavailable to you for the duration of the hold. The hold on a debit card is a hold on real money in your real checking account. If your checking account has $1,800 in it and a car rental company places a $600 hold, you have $1,200 available to spend for the duration of the rental, not $1,800. If an automatic bill payment comes due during that period and your available balance drops below the payment amount because of the hold, you may incur an overdraft fee even though your actual account balance was sufficient to cover the payment. On a credit card, the same hold is placed against your available credit limit, not against your checking account balance. Your checking account is untouched. Your available cash remains what it was. When the hold is released, typically within 3 to 5 business days after checkout or return, your credit limit returns to its previous level and no real money was ever affected. For hotel bookings and car rentals, always use a credit card. The hold is the same practice. The impact on your accessible funds is completely different. Category number 3, purchases from contractors, home repair services, or any service provider paid in advance. This is the category that took Bernard's $3,800 and the one where the legal protection difference between credit cards and debit cards is most consequential for seniors who own homes and regularly hire service providers for maintenance, repair, and improvement work. The Fair Credit Billing Act's protection for credit card purchases specifically includes the right to dispute charges for services not rendered as agreed. This protection applies to deposits paid to contractors, payments made to service providers who fail to deliver, and charges for work that was not completed to the standard agreed upon in writing. The dispute process requires you to make a good faith effort to resolve the issue with the merchant first, which typically means sending a written demand for refund or completion, and then filing the dispute with your credit card company if the merchant does not respond. The protection is not unlimited. It applies to purchases of more than $50 made in your home state or within 100 miles of your billing address, with some exceptions for purchases made by phone or online. For home contractors, who are almost by definition working at your home address, this geographic condition is almost always met. For any service provider who requires a deposit or advance payment, pay by credit card. Keep a copy of the written contract. Keep all written communications with the contractor. If the work is not completed as agreed, send a written demand for completion or refund before filing the credit card dispute. That sequence, written demand followed by credit card dispute if unresolved, is the process the Fair Credit Billing Act was designed to support, and it is the process that recovers money in situations that debit card payments leave permanently unrecoverable. Category number 4, medical equipment, supplements, and health-related purchases made online or by phone. This is the category I mentioned at the beginning of this video. This is the one that cost a retired couple $4,200 with zero legal recourse. And it is the one that is most specifically and most aggressively targeted at seniors because the marketing is designed for this demographic and the purchase amounts are high enough to be worth targeting. Medical equipment sold online and by phone to seniors includes a wide range of products, mobility aids, hearing devices, CPAP supplies, pain relief devices, compression garments, and a large category of supplements and wellness products that are marketed with health claims that stop just short of the regulatory threshold that would make them subject to FDA oversight as drugs. The fraud pattern in this category follows a consistent structure. A senior sees an advertisement online, on television, or through a direct mail piece for a health product. They call a number or visit a website and place an order using their debit card. The product either does not arrive, arrives and does not work as advertised, or arrives as part of a subscription program that the senior did not clearly understand they were enrolling in, resulting in recurring monthly charges. When the senior calls to cancel or dispute, they are told the product is non-returnable. The subscription terms were disclosed in fine print, or the charge was authorized and therefore not disputable. On a debit card, those arguments end the conversation because the Electronic Fund Transfer Act's protection for authorized transactions does not cover the situation where the authorization was obtained through misleading marketing. On a credit card, the Fair Credit Billing Act provides the right to dispute charges for goods not as described, a legal standard that covers products that do not perform as marketed, subscription charges that were not clearly disclosed, and billing practices that do not match what the consumer understood they were agreeing to at the time of purchase. The Federal Trade Commission has taken enforcement action against dozens of companies in this category specifically for deceptive marketing to seniors. The enforcement actions are documented at ftc.gov. In every case, the consumers who paid by credit card and filed disputes recovered more money than those who paid by debit card. For any health-related purchase made online or by phone from a company you have not previously bought from, use a credit card. Keep a screenshot or printout of the advertisement and the order page before you complete the purchase. If the product does not arrive, does not work as described, or results in unauthorized recurring charges, file the credit card dispute immediately with that documentation attached. Category number 5. Travel bookings including flights, vacation packages, and cruise deposits. The travel industry operates on a deposit and final payment structure that creates a specific vulnerability for debit card users when a travel company, airline, or cruise operator goes out of business, cancels a trip, or fails to deliver the travel experience as booked. When a travel company goes out of business after collecting your deposit and before delivering your travel, your recourse depends entirely on how you paid. Credit card payments made to travel companies that subsequently cease operations are recoverable through the Fair Credit Billing Act's protection for services not delivered. The credit card company initiates a chargeback against the travel company's merchant account and credits your account for the amount paid. Debit card payments in the same situation are not protected by the same mechanism. If the travel company's merchant account has been closed or the company has entered bankruptcy, the chargeback may be unsuccessful and the debit card holder may have no recovery path beyond joining the line of unsecured creditors in the bankruptcy proceeding, a process that typically returns cents on the dollar years after the original loss. The travel industry's vulnerability to business failure is well documented. Several major travel companies, airlines, and cruise operators have ceased operations with little warning in recent years, leaving customers who had paid deposits and final payments with significant unrecovered losses. In virtually every documented case, credit card holders recovered substantially more than debit card holders because of the Fair Credit Billing Act's chargeback protection. For all travel bookings, use a credit card. Keep your booking confirmation, your itinerary, and any correspondence with the travel company. If the trip is cancelled, the company ceases operations, or the travel experience does not match what was booked and paid for, file the credit card dispute within 60 days of the statement date on which the charge appeared. Category number 6, subscription services and recurring billing arrangements. Subscription billing, streaming services, software subscriptions, membership programs, magazine subscriptions, meal delivery services, and the wide range of subscription boxes and recurring product deliveries that have proliferated in the last decade represents a specific and growing debit card vulnerability for seniors because the recurring charge structure means that a single enrollment decision results in ongoing charges that may continue long after the senior has forgotten the original enrollment or decided they no longer want the service. The problem with debit card subscriptions is the cancellation dynamic. When a subscription is charged to a credit card and the cardholder disputes a charge or requests cancellation, the Fair Credit Billing Act's dispute process provides leverage. The credit card company can initiate a chargeback on charges that continued after a cancellation request was made and documented. The threat of a chargeback creates an incentive for the subscription company to process cancellations promptly and accurately. When a subscription is charged to a debit card and the cardholder disputes recurring charges, the Electronic Fund Transfer Act's protection applies only to unauthorized charges. A subscription charge that was originally authorized, even if the terms were not clearly understood, may not qualify as unauthorized even if the cardholder believes they canceled. The bank's dispute process for authorized recurring debit charges is less standardized and less consumer favorable than the credit card chargeback process. The practical recommendation is to use a credit card for any subscription or recurring billing arrangement and to maintain a list of every active subscription, the card it is charged to, and the cancellation process for each one. Review your credit card statement monthly for recurring charges and dispute any charge that appears after a documented cancellation request immediately. Category number 7, large purchases of any kind where a defect, non-delivery, or misrepresentation could result in a significant loss. This final category is a general principle that covers any purchase above $200 where the consequences of something going wrong are significant enough to make the legal protection difference between a credit card and a debit card material. The Fair Credit Billing Act's protection for goods not as described, not delivered, or defective applies to any credit card purchase above $50 subject to the geographic conditions described earlier. For large purchases, appliances, electronics, furniture, jewelry, artwork, collectibles, vehicles, that protection means that if the item arrives damaged, is materially different from what was advertised, or is never delivered, you have a federally mandated dispute process available that does not depend on the seller's willingness to cooperate. The seller may have a no-return policy. The seller may be unresponsive to your complaint. The seller may have gone out of business between the time of your purchase and the time of delivery. None of those circumstances prevent a credit card dispute under the Fair Credit Billing Act. The dispute is between you and your credit card company, not between you and the seller. On a debit card, your recourse in those same circumstances depends on the seller's return policy, your state's consumer protection laws, and your willingness to pursue small claims court or a regulatory complaint, all of which take time, cost effort, and produce uncertain outcomes. The credit card dispute takes a phone call and a written statement and produces a provisional credit to your account within 2 billing cycles. For any purchase above $200, use a credit card. The protection cost is $0 if you pay the balance in full every month. The protection value is the full purchase amount if something goes wrong. There are 3 specific situations where debit card vulnerability compounds the fastest and that I want you to know about before the next purchase decision presents itself. The first is holiday and gift shopping seasons. October through January is the highest volume period for online retail fraud targeting seniors. The combination of time pressure, unfamiliar retailers offering attractive prices, and the emotional context of gift giving creates conditions where purchase decisions are made faster and with less scrutiny than at other times of year. Every online purchase from an unfamiliar retailer during this period belongs on a credit card without exception. The second is the period immediately following a major life event. The months after a spouse passes away, after a move to a new residence, or after a major health event are periods when seniors are most likely to make large purchases, new furniture, home modifications, medical equipment, estate-related expenses, and are least likely to be thinking carefully about payment method. These are also the periods when fraud targeting is highest because criminal networks monitor public records for life events that signal a senior managing finances alone for the first time. Every large purchase in those months belongs on a credit card. The third is any purchase made in response to an unsolicited contact. If someone calls you, emails you, or sends you a direct mail piece offering a product or service and you decide to make a purchase, that purchase belongs on a credit card regardless of category and regardless of amount. Unsolicited contact is the origination point for a disproportionate share of senior consumer fraud. The credit card chargeback protection is your primary legal recourse if that contact turns out to be fraudulent. Bernard could not recover his $3,800. That money was gone before he knew the rule that would have protected it. But Bernard made 2 changes the week after our appointment that have protected every significant purchase he has made since then. He opened a no annual fee credit card through his credit union, the same institution where he has banked for 22 years. The application took 15 minutes. The card was in his mailbox 8 days later. He set up automatic full balance payment from his checking account on the statement due date every month so that the balance is paid in full automatically and he never pays interest. His checking account funds the card. His card protects the purchases. The only thing that changed was the layer of federal protection between his money and the things that can go wrong. He also created a simple rule for himself that he described to me at our follow-up appointment 3 months later. He said he divided every purchase into 2 categories in his mind: cash equivalent purchases, his grocery store, his regular gas station, his pharmacy where he has a long-standing account and has never had a dispute. Those he still uses his debit card for because the risk is low and the relationship is established. Everything else, anything online, any new vendor, any contractor, any advance payment, any subscription, any large purchase, goes on the credit card. Every time, without thinking about it again. He said the rule took about a week to feel automatic. He said the thing that surprised him was how little changed about his actual spending. The same money was going to the same places. The only difference was which card he handed over or which number he typed in. And that difference, he said, was the difference between having the federal government in the room with him when something went wrong and not having anyone in the room at all. He said he wished someone had explained it to him not as a warning about debt, because he had heard that warning for 50 years and it had made him afraid of credit cards, but as an explanation of what the 2 cards actually are. He said a debit card is a direct line to your money. A credit card, used correctly, is a shield in front of it. And he had spent 15 years handing over the direct line when the shield was available for free. If you take one number away from this video, take this one. 60 days. That is the window under the Fair Credit Billing Act, within which you must file a credit card dispute to receive the full protection the law provides. 60 days from the date the charge appeared on your statement. Not 60 days from when you noticed the problem. Not 60 days from when you finished trying to resolve it with the merchant. 60 days from the statement date. If you have a credit card purchase that went wrong and you have not yet filed a dispute, count back to the statement date and make sure you are still inside that window before you do anything else today. Your bank is not going to call you and explain the difference between the Electronic Fund Transfer Act and the Fair Credit Billing Act. Your debit card issuer is not going to send you a letter listing the purchase categories where you are legally underprotected. The only person who is going to make the decision to use the right card for the right purchase is you. And you can only make that decision correctly if you know what the 2 cards actually protect and where the protection ends. Send this video to one person you love who is over 60 and uses a debit card for most of their purchases. It does not matter whether they are on a fixed income or living comfortably. The fraud protection gap between a credit card and a debit card applies at every income level and on every purchase amount. One share from you might be the thing that means the next time something goes wrong, they get their money back instead of a letter from their bank explaining why they cannot. That is what this channel is here to do. I will see you in the next